Hello everybody, Naughty President here with another ranking tier list video. Now Nintendo does a good job of remembering old games and porting the games into the new systems, or even slapping a new coat of paint on them to bring life into old video games. So what I was thinking is that I could make a list here of the top 10 Nintendo DS and 3DS games I think deserve a port to the Nintendo Switch. I wish the Nintendo Switch would do what they did with the Nintendo Wii U and have the eShop have tons of digital old school games just ported in. They had tons of Game Boy Advance games and even Game Boy Color games just available on the Wii Shop for like $7, $8, $9, $10 of each. I think that would be really smart, being able to have that on the Switch and available for people that have trouble finding these old games. And that's exactly what they could do with the DS and 3DS games on this list. Just have them available on the eShop for a discounted price for you to play. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into the video and get started. Now, I don't see this one happening because they did just release Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on Nintendo Online, but it would be really cool if it still happened. Having the 3D remastered version of these ported from the 3DS into the Nintendo Switch, I think would be really cool. It would be awesome if they brought them over so we could experience the full versions of them instead of having to stick with the clunky Nintendo 64 versions like they have on Nintendo Online. Do I think it's gonna happen? No, probably not. But we've seen Nintendo do crazier things. Nobody thought that Sora was ever gonna get on Nintendo products like Super Smash Bros. And stuff like that. So, hey, it could definitely happen, but like I said, probably not. Over the years, there's been lots of Sonic the Hedgehog games. If you've played any modern Sonic the Hedgehog games, you know that you're Sonic running through levels, blasting your way through with the boost gauge, and trying to get to the end with lots of story and stuff involved. But the Nintendo DS decided to make the very first Sonic the Hedgehog game called Sonic Rush that had the boost gauge. It was the one that introduced the boost gauge to the series. Sonic Rush not only introduced us to the boost gauge, but it also introduced us to a new character, Blaze the Cat. For those of you who don't know who Blaze the Cat is, she's a pyrokinetic cat with the power of fire from an alternate dimension. I think it is about time for this game to be ported into the Nintendo eShop, because it's one of the few Sonic games that is strictly stuck on the Nintendo DS. The only way to play this other than the DS is to having to emulate it, and we don't really want that. So we would like it to be brought to the Switch for us to play. They could even add in Sonic and Rush Advance, but that's a whole nother game. So for this list, we're just sticking with the first one. Everybody loves Luigi's Mansion. Whether it be the first one, the sequel, or even the third one that's for the Switch, they're all three amazing games. But the problem with the first two, especially the second one, is that they're not available for the Switch. Yes, the very first one was originally out on the GameCube, and then they brought it into the 3DS as a port, but I'm specifically looking at Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon. Now that one is strictly stuck on the Nintendo 3DS. I would love to see this game ported in to the Nintendo Switch. One of the big key differences between the first game and the sequel Dark Moon is that it's in a completely different location in Evershade Valley. One of the other things that it did in this game versus the original, and then they continued this out into the third one, is introducing the Dark Light machine part, adding that onto the vacuum. Now what that can do is it can show us where hidden items are and even where ghosts go in different rooms. I thought that was a really cool feature that they added into this game. I would love to see this game ported into the Switch. This is actually my favorite of all three Luigi's Mansion games, and I would love to be able to play all three on the Switch. Now, Pokemon has been a game series that has done extremely well on the Switch. It started with Sword and Shield, and then we got Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu, and then Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, and now we have Arceus. It's just really good on the Nintendo Switch. Now, the next game that I think would be really interesting to be ported into the Switch is Pokemon X and Y. Now, do I actually think this is going to be ported into the Switch? No, probably not. It would be awesome because a lot of people love just being able to play the original games the way they are, but I think it's more likely that it's going to get a reboot, remake like they did with Diamond and Pearl at some point in the future. You know, we still got to go through Generation 5, but I do think X and Y will get remade maybe in like 10 years or something. But if it doesn't, it would be really cool for them to port it into the Switch as a digital download. I don't see why that would be a big deal because, you know, I think just having it upgraded the graphics to fit a big screen instead of just a small screen wouldn't be that difficult. So I think it would sell well and it would do well, and people that didn't have a DS could play it on the Switch for the first time. Now, the Legend of Zelda series has already seen its fair share on the Nintendo Switch already. We had the Breath of the Wild game that took Nintendo fans by storm, and then we had Link's Awakenings remade. And then of course we had Skyward Sword HD, which is the most recent Zelda title we have on the Switch. But there was one game series that I feel like got overlooked in the Nintendo DS era, and those two games were Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Now, this game obviously would be a lot harder to port into the Nintendo Switch, seeing as that the entire game was based on touch controls. Now, we've seen so far what they can do with Skyward Sword by getting rid of the motion controls and being able to play it on a controller. If they're able to do that, I don't see why they couldn't figure out how to make it where you can play it with button controls instead of a touchscreen. As long as you get rid of the touchscreen features and you leave like other ways to do certain things that you had to do with the touchscreens, I think it would work out. And of course this game would have to be bundled into the two because it just makes sense. Having both games bundled in to continue on the Wind Waker series, that's another game that should obviously be ported to Switch, but that's a whole different topic. I'm focusing on just these two. I really think that there would be a way for people to play these games that never got to play them on the Nintendo DS. Dragon Quest has been a series that has been around since the 80s. Back then it was known as Dragon Warrior, but then it gradually became Dragon Quest. Now, Dragon Quest has been a franchise that has been multiple consoles throughout its entire lifespan. One of those was a Nintendo DS, which was Dragon Quest IX. One thing that I think would be awesome is if this would be ported in the Switch, is because this is the only Dragon Quest game that is exclusively stuck on the Nintendo DS. Actually, Dragon Quest 1 through 8 has actually been ported even into smartphones, being able to play it on iOS or on Android devices. And then of course you got Dragon Quest X, which is on multiple platforms because it's a multiplayer game. And then Dragon Quest XI, of course, is the newest one, and is on the PS4 and Xbox and Switch. So it would make sense for them to port this game into the Switch because it's the only Dragon Quest that is not available except for one console. I think it's way overdue, and a lot of people have never gotten to play this game, and it's kind of a disappointment because the Dragon Quest series is so good. If you like JRPGs with great stories, you need to play Dragon Quest IX. So if they port it to Switch, update the graphics tiny bit, I think it would turn out really well and it would sell super well because Dragon Quest XI sold very well for Square Enix. Pokemon Arceus has been changing the way we play Pokemon, but a game did that before Arceus came out back in 2016, and that was Detective Pikachu. Detective Pikachu was a spin-off series where you get to play as Pikachu and his owner Tim and go solve crimes and solve mysteries. It's more of a button-clicking kind of game, and instead of catching Pokemon and raising them, you just solve crimes. I'm honestly surprised this game hasn't been ported to the Switch yet, seeing as a giant success that was Detective Pikachu movie starring Ryan Reynolds. It did so well that people like me included didn't even know Detective Pikachu existed until the movie. So a lot of people wanted to go check out the video game that the movie was based off of. So if they would have ported it to the Switch instead of just having it on the 3DS, a lot of people would have had better access to the game, and they could play it on the big screen and enjoy it that way. If you're a JRPG fan like I am, I'm sure most of you have played Chrono Trigger at some point in your life. Now, Chrono Trigger has been ported into multiple different systems throughout its lifespan. One of them was the Nintendo DS. Now, the easiest way to get this currently is, yes, on Steam, but it would be awesome if people that aren't PC users and like to only play on consoles, they should port this into the Switch. Now, I know the DS version had its complications with the bonus stuff that they added in, but that's easily fixable with the Nintendo Switch port. I'm just so shocked that this game has not been ported into the Switch, even if it's just a, digital port with no changes, no nothing, just have it as a cheap game in the eShop, because it's one of the most beloved JRPG classic games of all time. I mean, if you are a fan of Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Persona, stuff like that, a lot of those people got their first introduction to that genre through Chrono Trigger. So it was out on the SNES, and I don't know why it's taken this long to port it into a modern console. Like I said, it's in PC, but I'm talking about into a console. Metroid Dread was definitely one of the best-selling games of 2021. It would make sense for them to add Metroid Samus Returns that came out on the 3DS and add that into the Switch library. Port it in, it wouldn't be that difficult to do. Metroid Samus Returns was obviously the inspiration for Metroid Dread, and because Metroid Dread, like I said, sold so well, it would just be smart to port this one into the Switch and have it available so you could experience the game that came out before Metroid Dread. Metroid Samus Returns was a remake of Metroid 2, and Metroid 2 is already a beloved Metroid game, and then they remade it for the Nintendo DS, and it was also really, really good. So I don't know why they would just not port it into the Switch. If you just don't want to make money, I guess Nintendo, that's your choice. But I think it would obviously sell very well being a Metroid game for the Nintendo Switch. The number one pick I would pick is Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. I feel like this is a Zelda game that was overlooked for a lot of people. A Link Between Worlds brought a new kind of concept to Zelda games by being able to go flat onto different surfaces and be able to travel in between two different dimensions to continue your adventure. I thought it was a really cool and unique style of gaming for Zelda, and that they didn't do something like this before. It was just really a fun game that not many people that I knew got their hands on. I also enjoyed the fact that you could go to any part of the map anytime you wanted, because the weapons were loanable. Instead of just, go to a dungeon and get the game, you had to loan out your weapons to a shopkeeper in your house. So you could go to any part of the map for the most part and do the missions. I thought that was a really cool concept that they did for Legend of Zelda. Out of all the DS games that they have, this is my favorite game on the Nintendo DS. It is an overlooked game in my opinion. It's a very fun Zelda game that many people have not gotten to play because they didn't have a DS. So I feel like the Switch sells more than the DS ever did, so if they ported this into the Switch, many more people would get to be able to play this Zelda game. It doesn't seem like it'd be that hard of a game to port to the Switch. I mean, it looks just you put it in as a digital download. There's not really much that needs to be tweaked besides making it fit the big screen. Other than that, though, I don't feel like it would be that difficult. So yes, this is my #1 pick for the Nintendo Switch ports. Well, there you have it, folks. There is my top 10 DS games that deserve a Switch port. If you agree or disagree with anything in this video, make a comment down and I'll see what your thoughts are. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe while you're here. And if you like this video and you like this kind of content, I got more list videos in the description below, so go ahead and check those out, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for coming. See you later.